this fantastic photo show, Louder Than Hearts, Women Photographers from the Arab World and Iran. And this is our third photography show here at MEI. It is in partnership with Tribe Magazine, a nonprofit publication focused on documenting photography, moving image, and new media from the Arab world. And while all of our exhibits have been wonderful, there is something so powerful and personal about this show. It is really a very, very special show. It's curated by Rania Matar. She herself is an award-winning photographer. She's in the show, and she has gathered some of the most talented Middle Eastern women photographers living today. Some are Magnum photographers, some have been trained by Magnum photographers. Several, like Rania herself and one of our Iranian photographers, Nusha Tavakolyan, are collected in major museums like the Freer Sackler. They hail from many different countries, many of them sort of in the eye of the storm right now: Lebanon, Yemen, Palestine, Iran, and more. And through their portraits and images, they tell remarkable stories about the strength and resilience of women in the region. And women are going through so much right now. And in the gallery, you'll meet young Iranian women who've dyed their hair pink and blue in defiance of the Islamic Republic. You'll see Rania Matar's moving images of Lebanese women who are dealing with the trauma of the Beirut port blast and the memory of the civil war. Palestinian photographer Safa Khatib looks at the resilience of women in Israeli prisons under occupation with her series on braids. And it's hard to walk away without being deeply touched by the stories of these women, which we'll be discussing on our tour of the show tonight. And if you can't join us for the tour, I hope you stop and really read the wall labels, because they tell the stories of these women who are trailblazers and whose courage really serves as an inspiration to us all. The works are all for sale, by the way. We have a couple of price sheets that are around. 70% of the proceeds go to the women photographers, so please do support them. If you can't find a price sheet, come to me or Lynn, and we will find one for you. As for tonight's program, we're going to be hearing from Lynn Snejd, the director of our Arts and Culture Center, soon, in conversation with the curator, Rania Matar. And that will be followed by a tour of the exhibit. So stick around for that. Take photos, take videos, post them, get people excited. The show is up for at least 4 months. And we're also very happy to give tours of the show to schools, to corporations, to government institutions. We have 50 people coming from the FBI in June to see this show. They asked if they could bring their weapons or if they should leave them in the car. We said, leave them in the car, please. There's already enough violence in this world. And there's just so much that you can learn about the region through the lens of these women photographers and the protagonists that they are talking about. Now, before we turn to the conversation, just a note about our upcoming events. Next weekend, MEI is hosting a very unique program. We're putting on a weekend festival of traumedy with Lebanese comedy host Rola Z. And she's developed this unique art form that looks at trauma through the lens of humor in order to talk about difficult topics and to heal. So please come to our Traumedy show here at MEI on Friday the 17th. There's some flyers outside. We have a couple of amazing Arab comedians, including Yasmin Al-Hadi, who I just heard on Snap, some amazing NPR show the other day. We're also doing a show at Busboys and Poets in Anacostia the next night, Saturday the 18th. And we're running a panel early in the day looking at the role of comedy in social change. So please come out for that. And this has been sponsored in part by the DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities, supported by the NEA. Now let's turn back to our conversation tonight. We are so grateful to our curator, Rania Matar, for agreeing to work on this show. Thank you, Rania. Rania was raised in Lebanon and moved to the US in 1984, and her photography is informed by cross-cultural experiences and personal narratives, and it explores themes of personal and collective identity through photos of women in the US and the Middle East. Her work has been exhibited in museums worldwide, including the Museum of Fine Arts Boston, the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, the Arab World Institute in Paris, and so many more. The National Museum of Women in the Arts, which just reopened here in DC, owns several of her works and is currently featuring a video about her life and work in the museum. So run down and check it out. And she's the recipient of numerous prestigious awards, fellowships, and residencies, including a Guggenheim Fellowship, a Mellon Foundation Artist Residency, and a Leica, the famous the famous camera, Woman Photo Award, and so much more. So thank you, Rania, for your tremendous work on this show. We are so indebted to you and grateful. The Washington Post is coming tomorrow to review it. I want to thank the photo editor of Tribe Magazine, our partner. Soraya, where are you? Oh, no, there she is. Thank you, Soraya, for everything you do to support photographers in the Arab world. It is invaluable. I want to thank the patron of the show, MEI Board of Governors member and a photographer herself, Ann Kaiser. Ann, raise your hand. Thank you. And of course, a huge shout out to Lynn Snej, the director of the Arts and Culture Center. She does all the heavy lifting with so much grace and so much humor, and we couldn't do any of it without her. And so without further ado, I'd like to hand the show over to Lynn. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kate. Thank you. And thank you, all of you, for coming out. It's lovely to see how much photography is loved in this town, and this show is indeed very special. And it's lovely to sit with you, Rania, five months after, and we have this beautiful show, a lot of hard work, but this beautiful show that you've pulled together graces the wall of our gallery. And thank you. It's such a pleasure to sit down with you and talk about it. And let's bring it to life a little bit for our audiences. Maybe you can talk a little bit about the frame of the show, how many artists are in it, how many works, talk a little bit about the title, and then we'll go further, deeper in some of the works.
Well, first, thank you, Lynn, and thank you, Kate, everybody at MEI, Soraya from Tribe, and Yasmin, who we couldn't have done without her back of the house help. But really, especially Lynn, I call her Lynn, but anyway. I might be considered the curator, but she really should be considered the co-curator, because I could not have done anything without her. I'm not a curator, I'm a photographer. It's my first time being on the other side of things, and I could not have done it without her guidance along the way. As for the show, well, I was very honored. Oh my God, I'm just seeing friends of mine in the back. I was very honored to be asked to exhibit and to also invite some heroes of mine to be part of the show. I feel like with the situation in the Middle East right now, it's such a bright spot to look at art and beauty and humanity, and all coming from women. So that for me was important. I forgot what the question was, but
You're fine.
So how did we? I mean, it was really an exercise in finding women who each address something very personal to where they're from, to their lives, and somehow it unites the show that each story is personal, but somehow there's a shared humanity and a thread that goes through all of it that focuses on resilience, strength, humanity. And I would say that's what I hope people take from it. So there are 10 women in the show, me being one of them, so I had to look for 9 more. And they come from Lebanon, Palestine, Yemen, Egypt, Iran,
Saudi Arabia,
Egypt. Yeah, Egypt and Jordan. So it really feels like we covered the large geographic area. Honestly, if there was more space, we could have even included more, because there's so much talent. So
yeah, absolutely. And I love the process of selection that we went through, that you have spearheaded as well. Because what was important to you in that selection? What is it that you really wanted to show? Because you were really adamant to have this intergenerational and talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's if you look at the date of birth, you could realize I'm the oldest one in the show. But I mean, there are, it goes through all sorts of ages, and there are some women who have never been exhibited, and I love it that they, like, for example, Carmen Yahshoushi is exhibited next to Nusha Tavakolian, who's a Magnum photographer. I love it that, for example, Nusha, who's really very famous, was so gracious and eager to work with. So it felt like it was a team effort, and I was thanking, you know, Lynn and everybody at MEI, but I'm so grateful to every single one of these women to have been part of it. The selection was a lot of fun, actually. I was at an exhibition at the Institut du Monde Arabe in November, and I discovered a couple of the photographers there. So it was so cool to look at work, knowing in the back of my head that, you know, I was acting like a curator a little bit, which I never had to do that. So I saw the work of Rihaf Batniji there, who's exhibited here, and Safa Khatib, who also the braids, who is exhibited here. So there's, so anyway, so it was a lovely process, and working with Lynn was great because she was also guiding me. I could be a little bit all over the place, as my husband knows here, and she kept me very, we had a weekly Zoom call. She kept me focused, organized, and really, she also suggested photographers.
I think what really emerges from the show, and as we take you through the gallery tour, and Rania tells us more, you will see how, right, the show is really a call of you leave with this sense of solidarity, of this uplifting feelings of sisterhood, womenhood, women who really emerge from situations of adversity. But there are some bodies of work that really segue into each other, and I think maybe you can highlight a few.
Yeah,
Rania.
that's a good point. And actually, also, like, you know, even though a lot of these countries that are at war or there's conflict, we didn't want to show that. We wanted to show how people react to this by making something powerful and beautiful and telling their story. So, I mean, and if you see it, there's a continuity in the work that flows pretty nicely. As I mentioned, like, for example, Carmen exhibited next to Nusha. Carmen is dealing with some, you know, if you look at them, I mean, they deal with the civil war in Lebanon, with how women bear the burden. And a lot of the women she is representing are a little older. And then it goes to Nusha, who are these younger, very young, actually, Syrian Kurdish fighter who joined the army to fight ISIS. And they're all teenagers, basically. And then from there, Nusha's part of the exhibition series ends with that wedding gown that these young women are not allowed to ever dream of having because they're considered to be married to their country and their cause. But then it all segues to the work of
The Saudi
Tasneem Sultan, who deals with weddings and marriage and in Saudi Arabia. And then she also deals with gender issues, which takes us to the work of
absolutely
of
Hiba Al-Khalifa.
I'm spacing out. I'm so sorry. Of Hiba, the Egyptian photographer who deals also very much with gender and being a single mom. So there's a dialogue between the work and the show, and it was beautiful to be able to do that. So
fantastic. Let's dive in a little bit into your work, because it really acts, and that's why we reached out to you, right? We felt that your work could be the curtain riser to all of those issues and themes that emerge from the other. Talk a little bit about your work, and maybe talk a little bit about your practice in general, and then the genesis of the project that you're presenting.
Okay.
Where do I go 50 years later?
So my work focuses mainly on women. Actually, the show focuses on women as well, and often they've been the ages of my daughters as they grow through the age through life, you know. Most of my work before this project, I photographed in Lebanon and in Palestinian refugee camps and in the US. And this was very much about focusing on shared humanity. Where I live in the US, I might be the only woman in the show who actually lives in the US. So, and I became a photographer literally after September 11. Before that, I was photographing my children. But I wanted to change the narrative of the them versus us and the very divisive news somehow, you know, the rhetoric of, again, you're with us or against us. So I started photographing in Lebanon. And after that, I became interested in photographing women in both places in an effort to focus on shared humanity. And again, through womanhood, through growing up and growing older, motherhood. So I was working on that, and then in all my projects. And then the explosions at the port of Beirut happened in 2020, and my son decided to go volunteer there, and I went with him right after the explosion. Thought I would photograph the destruction, and I wasn't interested in that. I was in awe of the women who were helping with the reconstruction. So I started photographing them, and before I knew it, it turned into a project. So at some point I realized, after the port and then the economic collapse and all this, the port was just one incident in that whole 50-year stretch that Lebanon has been going through since the civil war. So I realized, oh my God, 2025 is the 50th anniversary of the war. And after the port, there was such a big wave of immigration out of the country. And it was almost like looking at my younger self, because the last wave of immigration was that big, was 1984, 85, which is when I left, and many people my age left then. So I started collaborating with the women. Every picture has a narrative, and is made really because of what these women are willing to give me. And there's so much creativity. There's so much need for them to express themselves. Like, I owe so much to each one of them for the pictures, really.
I am sure that everybody wants to explore the show, but one last, I think, to frame the importance of photography and the particular place that it has in the region. And you're a photographer, Rania. Maybe speak a little bit about your thoughts. Why do you think photography has developed so much in the region the past 15 years, and all of the support that exists to develop and nurture young photographers in the Middle East? For you, why is it important? Why is photography important?
As I was mentioning before, you just made me think of that in my answer. I literally became a photographer after 2001 because I wanted to tell a different story. So there's a way with photography to bring the narrative. And I feel like, unfortunately, there's always a drama or another in the Middle East. And in a way, it's a way for people who live there to get their story across. And I feel like, there's also, it's back and forth, right? Because you're seeing a lot of photography, especially what's happening now with the war in Gaza. You see there's a constant flow of photographs on Instagram. So that's another way photography is being used, and it's important because we're able to learn about it. It bears witness, right? But there's also photography like what we're exhibiting here, which comes maybe from a place of conflict and pain or in some sort, but is expressed through art. And so I feel like it's a way of telling story. And as Lina and I were talking before, we don't have a lot of these countries don't have a system of archiving history. So the fact that now all of it's being documented and photographed, we have a history that's being developed,
chronicled. And in a sense, photography has this ability to bear witness, in a sense, whether it's art photography or whether, and I think there is a huge embrace of photography from young people in the region. My final question before, people want to come and speak to you and want to enjoy the show, and Rania will lead a tour in the gallery in a couple of minutes, so do join that. My last question to you is, what would you like as the curator, but also as a photographer, for people to leave with? What do you hope audiences will take away as they
well, considering the political climate we're in, I hope they take away that there's so much beauty in this part of the world. It seems like we only hear of a lot of these countries when there's a war and conflict, and we tend to forget that they exist. I want them to take away that women are not victims, that there's so much power in that show. Women come in all shapes and sizes and religions in the Middle East. Often we tend to think of women in a one-dimensional manner when coming from that area, and I hope the show shows that it's not the case. So.
Rania, thank you. It's been lovely to collaborate.